8:30. Having observed all protocol, let me acknowledge those colleagues that are here. But firstly, let me welcome all of you here. You're looking great, fresh, healthy for a Monday. But I guess it's because you are mostly postgraduate students. If you are second years, it will be a different Monday. So I assume that you have reached that stage of maturity where weekends for you as students are like any other day. Not in my student days. I would be crawling myself to the first or second period now at the university I once studied at. And I've seen a few. But really welcome to the universities that are here. I've seen Fort Hare, UNISA, University of Limpopo, of course VUT, Solplachi University, University of Mpumalanga, the University of Great Zimbabwe, the National Research Foundation, the European Union, the Presidential Climate Commission, a number of, we've also invited young people from outside of the university space, from EarthLife Africa and from the VAL Environmental Justice Networks, because we thought that the dialogue can not only be between students themselves. There is a coining we made a few years ago in the student movement called From Ivory Towers to People's Universities. And it is that underlines to make sure even your research really demonstrates that we've moved from those pure white clouds into really being at the bottom of development and the challenges that society and humanity faces. With that having done, I don't want to belabor the point, but we'll continue to interact. We've got a very interesting, fascinating discussion. We've also invited the local organizing committee for the youth aspect of the G20, because that ultimately will drive the sustainability agenda into the world leaders' hearts and minds. So we're going to be having quite a fascinating diversity of people. So you'd not only be talking to yourselves as young academics, as middle-aged academics, but you'd also be talking to other people. There is a seat missing for that gentleman. I don't want to say we are full. I want to say there is a seat missing for him. They are bringing a few chairs, but it really shows that we heeded the call. I know there are a few members of the senior leadership of the university, of course led by the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Innovation, Internationalization, Research and Commercialization, but also the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Maleho. I've also quickly introduced myself to Aus Dimpo, who's the head of department for the Department of Tourism. So with that, I would observe all protocols. Dr. Nelana, who's the DVC, Professor Maleho, Aus Dimpo, HOD Tourism, but all of you are welcome in your eminence. As I said, my name is Blessing Manali. Now that we have settled and want to feel at home, in South African culture, they would say we must be told that isn't just as boshiwe. We've tied the dogs so that we can feel at home. So I want to take this, and also let me acknowledge the executive that I'm with here from the Presidential Climate Commission. Mkashwa, Mr. Dumisani Nxumalo, who's our acting chief operating officer, Ms. Lindiwe Johnson, who's responsible for our just transition, and Ms. Moroisi Ramunyai, who's our policy advisor for adaptation and resilience. And then we've got our intern, Kwanele, but who's also a postgraduate student also. So Kwanele, welcome to your peers also. Yeah. So indeed, really, it's quite a diverse, and it's a balance between men and women for Women's Month, but it should be like that every day. So I think that we've ticked all the boxes, not for malicious compliance, but for the value of what really diversity should be about. So having said that and welcome you, let me then formally call Professor Maleho, who's the Dean of Humanities at the Valley University of Technology, to come and set the scene and formally welcome us at home. And then as he comes in, I'll beam the program now so that we could see how we're going to do. Yes, Prof.
Can you hear me now? I know that some of us are disadvantaged in terms of height, but can you hear me now? Vice Chancellor in absentia, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation, Commercialization, and Internationalization, Dr. Simphiwe Nelana, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Teaching and Learning, Dr. Kanakana Katumba, in absentia, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Resources and Planning, Mr. Mathalela, in absentia, Presidential Climate Commission Executive Director, Ms. Dora Mudise, Acting Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Dumisani Numalo, Ms. Mbali Baduza, distinguished guests, esteemed faculty members, students, brilliant delegates, and as they say, all protocol observed. I stand before you on behalf of the Vaal University of Technology, and particularly the Faculty of Human Sciences. It is indeed my immense pleasure and honor to extend a very warm welcome to you all. I am absolutely thrilled to see so many illustrious minds gathered here today for the postgraduate student symposium centered around the theme, climate resilient, smart, and sustainable futures. Ladies and gentlemen, a gathering of this magnitude is never the effort of a single person. I would like to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude to our perspicacious keynote speaker, Ms. Mbali Baduza, for gracing us with her presence and sharing invaluable insight on jet context and the critical role of skills and social dialogue. Furthermore, let me extend my sincere gratitude to our panel for today. Thank you for your time and expertise in guiding our presenters today. So to our esteemed faculty members and university at large, thank you very much for your unwavering support and dedication. And a huge round of applause for the heart and soul of this event, postgraduate students. Let's give them a well-deserved round of applause. But don't be comfortable, because today is truly belonging to the delegates. You are the researchers, the thinkers, the innovators, and the future leaders in your respective fields. You have come from near and far, bringing with you not just your projects and presentations, but your curiosity, your unique perspective, and your potential to challenge the status quo. Over the next coming 3 days, I must say, the halls of Emperor's Palace will buzz with the energy of your ideas. You will present your findings, engage in thought-provoking discussions, and participate in stimulating debates. You will not only share your knowledge, but also have the chance to absorb the knowledge of your peers. Remember, a symposium is more than just a series of presentations. It is a collaborative ecosystem, It is a place to connect, to ask questions, and to be inspired. Ladies and gentlemen, the agenda ahead is packed with insightful paper presentations, engaging sessions, and interactive workshops that will be taking place today. I encourage you to dive in, to participate actively, and make the most of every moment. So let us begin this journey of intellectual exploration together. Let's make this symposium a memorable milestone in our academic careers. Once again, a heartfelt welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. Let me borrow from a proverb which is often attributed to Benjamin Franklin. I quote, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn." Close quote. As we usher into the 2025 International Conference on Climate Resilient, Smart and Sustainable Futures, we are reminded of academic discourse on climate change as a global pitbull. We cannot be limited in our endeavors. Now, without further ado, let's get started. I wish you all a very productive and inspiring symposium. I declare this postgraduate student symposium launched. Thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you very much, Prof. Indeed, for a warm welcome from the Faculty of Human Sciences. But having said that, we would like to call on now the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Dr. Simpiwe Speech Nelana. I'll always find a way of making sure that I add that informal name, Doc, to really come and welcome. And it's indeed a great honor for some of us who would only meet DVCs when we were causing trouble in SASCO then. But now we're able to sit here and officiate sessions of this great magnitude. Professor Nelana is the Deputy Vice Chancellor at VUT, responsible for innovation, research, internationalization, and commercialization. I was saying to Prof that in case they want to fire you, you've got so many ranks. They fire, you can always jump to the other one. You can always say, you fired the head of internationalization, but not for research. But with that, let's welcome the DVC into the podium. Thanks.
Good morning. I feel overwhelmed. I didn't expect so many people. It's indeed the honor from my side and that of the university to be standing here. Program Director, we come a long way in terms of this project. I remember at the time when you approached us, we didn't know that at this stage we'll be actually hosting a conference. So I'm happy that our journey is actually yielding fruits. I will stand on an established protocol. I don't want to start a fight without, for not mentioning other people's names, but I acknowledge the commissioners, distinguished commissioners of the Presidential Climate Change Commission, and also our esteemed keynote speaker today, Ms. Mbali Budaza, and Executive Director, and our moderator, Mr. Blessing Monare, and also our Executive Dean. This conference is hosted under his faculty. At the beginning, there was a big fight between me and him, who's supposed to be the chairperson. I end up having to give in because I think he really is a big fighter, Prof. Maleo. Colleagues, students, most importantly, the youth who are here today, who are actually also the heart of this today's symposium, I greet you warmly. It gives me pleasure on behalf of the University of Technology to welcome you to this important gathering. The Youth Symposium, the role of higher education, that is a theme in just transition. This event held under the framework of our new Memorandum of Understanding with the PCC that will start from 2025 to 2030 marks not only a collaboration but a commitment to co-creating pathways for a sustainable and equitable future. Maybe to set the scene. The just energy transition is not just a technological adjustment, nor a matter of shifting from coal to renewables. It is a profound societal transformation. At its heart, it's about people, fairness, and opportunity. It's about ensuring that as we embrace the green economy, we do not leave communities behind. For our students and maybe young people and emerging researchers, this transition is deeply personal. It will define the economy they inherit, the skills they require, and the society in which they live. That is why it is fitting that we begin this conference with a youth-focused dialogue to center their voices, their aspirations, and their ideas. Maybe to touch on the theme of this symposium. As a university, we have a special responsibility. Higher education institutions are positioned at the intersection of knowledge creation, skills development, and community engagement. Of course, community engagement also falls under my portfolio, so I add that blessing. We are not merely observers of the just transition, we are active shapers of it. I think this discussion today should shape an agenda going forward. So, what should we do as a mandate? We must focus on skills development. We must do what we're doing today, social dialogue. We must also do youth engagement. In terms of collaboration between us and the PCC, today's event embodies a collaboration. The partnership between PCC and VUT is a testament to what is possible when national policy meets institutional research and community engagement. Our joint agenda is clear, and also maybe the agenda of other universities that are part and parcel of the PCC. Here are the joint agenda objectives: to identify and close the gap between what higher education offers and what the new economy demands; to develop authentic pathways that connect education to employment innovation; to amplify the voice of young people, ensuring that they are not sidelined in decision making; and to formulate actionable recommendations that will guide both universities and policymakers. I want to emphasize this is not symbolic. Our goal is to deliver tangible outputs, recommendations, publish papers, and a strengthened network of young leaders will carry this forward. Maybe, as I'm about to conclude, maybe why we need youth to be involved. Allow me to emphasize why this youth symposium matters. South African demographic reality is that the majority of our population is young. If the just transition is to be truly just, it must prioritize the needs, the dreams, and opportunities of this generation. We cannot afford to design a future for our youth without youth. We must design it with them. In doing so, we must unlock the creativity, innovation, and resilience that young people naturally bring to the table. As I conclude, because I'm really eager to listen to you, colleagues, postgraduate students and emerging researchers. As we embark on today's discussion, let us remember the choices we make today will echo into 2030 and beyond. I repeat, the choices we make today will echo into 2030 and beyond. Let us ensure that those echoes reflect a society that is sustainable, fair, and prosperous for all. On behalf of VUT and the Vice Chancellor in absentia, I thank the PC for this collaboration, our distinguished speakers for their insights, and our students for their courage and vision. I wish you the best for today and the entire week so that we can actually engage in fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Braspich. Thank you, DVC. There are two cliches I always refer to when people speak about development and climate or environment, or generally about the just transition. There is a saying that says, one day because of hunger and poverty, one day the poor will be left with nothing else to eat but the rich. I don't know if you get that. One day, yeah, depending on your level of English comprehension, one day the poor will be left with nothing else to eat but the rich. It is not saying only the rich will be left, the ones eating. It's saying that when there is poverty, we, the rich, will be the ones to be eaten. So we must never allow a situation whereby the poverty and equity gap is so full that the only way for one of the species to survive is to eat another. And that's what that cliche means. And then the other one says, when the last river is dry, the last fish is caught, and the last tree is cut, then we'll discover that money cannot be eaten. Then we'll discover that we cannot eat money. And that is the moral and value proposition of why we're in the just transition. Thank you very much, Prof. Colleagues, we have made some adjustments to our program, and we want it to be as interactive as possible. So I know I've not put up the nominees, but I know the VUT representatives from the postgrad would be here. Otherwise, we are just going to have a volunteer. But I know that our colleagues from the Lekoi are here. Is Non-Tutuzelo here? Yes, oh yes, there she is. And then there is colleagues from the VAL, broader VAL community. I don't know who Earth Life will be represented by. Is there the Earth Life colleagues, the NGOs? The people have left. But I'm sure, there's the young gentleman there. Yes. But before we move into that panel, I was going to then request over now the Chief Operating Officer of the PCC, Mr. Dumisani Nxumalo, to just come and outline broadly what the PCC is, what the mandate is, and in the light of the current environment, and tell us why they are closing power stations, promising us the sun. Because some people, as Prof was research that's happening in innovation, in research, in empowering communities, and we just thought that context would then set the basis for that. In case we run late, colleagues will not have a tea break, we'd have a working tea break. So if you feel like you need some fresh adrenaline, you can always go out and grab coffee, but we'll take it by the time. But with those words, let me welcome Babu Dumisani Nxumalo, Mkasha.
Thank you, Program Director. Good morning, everyone. And all protocol observed. I would not go into the protocols and will just take precedence from the previous speakers. Prof said earlier on that there's some advantages and disadvantages to certain height levels. Others say the higher you go, the colder it becomes. So probably that's why some of us remained where we are. Colleagues, look, I firstly want to apologize for Commissioner Mbali Paduza, who would have loved to be with us here today, but unfortunately, due to other pressing commitments, we have had to split, divide and conquer, and go to other engagements. The same goes for our ED, who's also very passionate about young people, and would have loved to be here as well, to just hear your views, but also exchange some views with you today. Thank you very much for making the time really to join us here today. I think this is a very profound partnership for us. Mr. Manale has been at it. Of course, we've just been behind the scenes supporting. It's also been a very difficult one to explain to funders. So part of the job that Manale and I engage on is to ask for money for these engagements to be possible. So just to also put it in context, when you see the EU logo there on the program, it's not the EU that said you must come and sit here and discuss. It's the university and the Presidential Climate Commission that have shared a vision and the need for us to come here and discuss. And out of that, Both then went to approach the EU, and the EU has been amenable to our ask, and they gave us the money then. So just to put it in context, because unfortunately the PCC is one of those institutions that's always poked for being a tool of the West or something to that nature. But the change, I think we can all see it. It's happening, and it's happening in real time. Really, to the core of our mandate, Mr. Manale, it's more really on the just transition. And as some of you may already have an idea or may have seen the Climate Change Act, which really speaks about the PCC under Section 10 being set up as an advisory body to government and society around a just transition to a low-carbon, climate-resilient economy and society. So the economy, as Mr. Manale said, we're not talking about the money alone, but we're also talking about the people, from a financing point of view. So it's funding that will really make some of your postgraduate research possible, funding that will make some of the pilots that we need to test out coming from your research endeavors possible. But what we are really looking at also, which is in line with the theme of the conference, is really work around climate resilience and adaptation. And Ms. Morosi Munyai here with us really is leading the work around thinking through how do we take some of the research work that we've done and commercialize it into impactful projects from what we call the Just Adaptation and Resilience Investment Plan. So that's the work under 2. Under 3, it's really the work around supporting technology diagnostics and trade considerations. And University of Technologies are really the centers, amongst others, where technology innovations really thrive. This is where institutions such as SASOL, institutions such as ESCOM, ArcelorMittal, and others come to seek solutions for their innovations or technological transitions. So we really call on the universities and the students in this room in particular to continue the investment in that. In the interest of time, I will not read through everything, but I'll just talk to specifics. Really what's important here is that from a national climate and energy priorities, you can already see the feature very strongly so from the Climate Change Act in terms of the sectors that are mentioned there, that needs really a focus area. From the Just Transition Framework, which is currently on your tables, pages 16 all the way to 17 speaks exactly to the question of skills. It speaks exactly to some of the thematic discussions in the conference and exactly what we want to do and achieve, both from a policy point of view, but also from an action point of view. We also have the Jet Skills desk, which is going to be launched. This is part of the 8.5 work. I think if I say 8.5 is the most famous way of calling the Just Energy Transition implementation plan. Part of the PCC's intervention in that was really to say the 0.1% that was initially allocated there would not even scratch the surface in terms of moving the skills discussion in the country. So those were some of the work, some of the advisory that we've had to put in, and the skills desk work has really been some of the hard earnings that Lindiwe, who's joined us here, have had to put through to make it possible for the ladies and gentlemen in this room to be able to really engage from a just energy transition point of view. We know the stats. I've just taken the 40% because I wanted to speak to a particular geographic, but that's really context specific. It's not the national, it's not exactly the national figure. You'd know the national figure sitting at 33.3, which is generic, but this is very specific. But some of the key national initiatives there include the Presidential Employment Stimulus, which I think has played quite a critical role. The NYDA has recently finalized or set up its board, and I think that will provide quite a lot of opportunities for the young people to engage that board, given the membership of the board coming from the universities in the main, but also coming from different sectors of the economy, and there to really activate and reimagine that institution. There's also the question of research. You know, in the PCC, we spend a lot of time trying to understand the shifts, if you like, from some of the projected sectoral transitions, and those shifts really empower us to give an understanding of what the skills will be that are required for such economies of the future. So this is some of the convening work as we are here today that we really engage with as the PCC. And we also do have an annual skills indaba where we bring in not only just the universities or the young people, but also the department, government, to really engage on the skills question, but also begin to talk to some implementable actions, which Ms. Linda Johnson will speak to in a much more specific way. I just thought I should highlight the hemp skills value chain, given that we are in this Val Triangle, and there's quite a lot of work that will still need to be done from a rehabilitation point of view. You know, as I was driving in on the R59, I started, noticing a change in smell as I was approaching the Val Triangles. Then I was reminded from my schooling days that, by the way, this is one of the most polluted areas, and the solutions lies in this room in terms of how do we go about with resolving that. And just in closing, on the last slide, Blessing, I think what will be even more important is that youth continue to subject themselves in terms of engagement with various convenings. In particular, the PCC really has what it calls the Youth Caucus or Youth Leaders Caucus, the Gender Inclusive Working Group, which has largely been looking at the Transition Coalition. We also have tried to mainstream through a youth-focused engagement, youth voices into the NTC recommendation, which will be discussed and deliberated upon tomorrow. But really, and again, I invite you to the skills in Daba, which is where we'll also be taking a deep dive on the skills side. But what's even more important is that PCC has started thinking about some of the investment questions. So we're putting together with the DBSA, or the Development Bank of South Africa, work around the Just Transition Financing Mechanism, which amongst others would look at supporting youth-led SMMEs in renewable energy, in recycling, in green services. Green services obviously could range from your recycled water being used to clean, for instance, solar panels on roofs and things. So that's some of the work that we are engaging in, including piloting social ownership of renewable energy, which you can also speak to in detail later on. That's really now trying to, what you call this, implement one of our principles on the just transition, which is around distributive justice, where we're saying let's share not only just the risks, but let's also share the opportunities that come with the just transition. So I'd leave you with that for now and say I think youth are really not just the beneficiaries, but they are the architects of South Africa's climate resilient future, as the Prof said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dumisani. Now that we have heard the overall vision of the university and what the PCC stands for, on your table you've got two reports, three. The Just Transition Framework, which is the overall framework adopted by Cabinet 3 years ago to basically guide how we move. And then you have got the State of Climate Action Report, which was the first ever comprehensive report done in the country, in South Africa, about how we are responding to climate action in society. Then you've got the third report called the Komati Report, Lessons from the Decommissioning. And that is probably the most spoken about power station in the world, not in South Africa, in the world. Because it was decommissioned at the time when we were having load shedding, and everybody else said, you see, you're trying to decommission power stations in the middle of an energy crisis. But we've told the story. So for some of you that are actually, and I'm happy that it is the humanities that are leading this, there is quite a lot of discussion about beyond engineering. How then does society interact with such major changes in economy and society? So those reports, and I know the colleague from here from she's got a PhD in philosophy, was already saying, can I find my new abstract, my new topic to discuss? And I think that if you read those reports, you're going to find major, you don't have to wait for your supervisor to tell you what to think. Read the report, you'll find a research abstract. There is quite a lot of areas to research. The body of knowledge on the just transition, it's not that broad in South Africa and in the world. So I think that we should do that. Having done that, colleagues, now I don't want this listen and watch. So the tech people have done me a disservice, so I don't know how my panel is going to move. And I don't want to call a panelist to come with their chair here. You may have to do that. Or do we have roving microphones, gentlemen? Do we have microphones that moves around? Yeah, it's budget cuts. It's austerity measures, eh? Yeah, I think let's move the chairs. Or we'll just allow the panelists to come in one by one. But I think that we've listened too much to institutions that are formalized. Can I call in now the VAL community, Earth Life Africa, to just come and give it an out-of-school perspective? I mean, when I'm saying out of school, I mean out of the current research ecosystem, you know. And a lot of our young people, they are out of school because they've completed, not they are out of school because they are not completed. But we've got to appreciate that there are a lot of other young people that have not completed matric, that they did not make it into universities, they did not go and make it into technical, others went to fly-by-night colleges, others paid and they never got the receipt. So there's a number of young people in the space under very, very varying circumstances. And we think that, and when Dumisani said the VAL, it's one of the hot spots. Actually, Sasol 1 started here. Sasol 2 is what in Secunda. I don't want to talk to the story about what else people did to Sasol 1. DVC Nelani can speak about the sabotaging agencies. But one of the most successful military operations to free this country was a bombing of one of the Sasol plants by Bani Molokwane. We must say those things, but now we can no more bomb this infrastructure because we need them for our development. But the kind of tension we had in the country had us bombing some of the most successful economic infrastructures, but it had to be done. So it has got both histories of having been the polecat of the struggle and being bombed by Umkhonto we Sizwe, but also being a beacon of economic development and growth in this region. So that's why you see Sasol back. But having said that, let me call in our young men from youth outside of the formal university structures to just come and tell us what are their issues and all that. And then when we have the open discussion, we then open up for more voices. And then after that, then I'll call the LECOI. Is it LECOI? Local Committee on Youth, that have been caught organizing the G20 and the World Economic Forum. You are welcome. So you're already having a BRICS notebook, so you're a young diplomat.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is it afternoon or is it still morning? It's morning on a Monday. Morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here speaking about this topic that is actually involving us as young people, the youth. So I got the privilege to actually be part of a combined forum meeting on the 29th of, is it July? Yes, July 2025. And the agenda was basically about the PCC and also climate change. So what I learned about PCC, it's that it's a thing that has stakeholders and it's involved by like citizens, you know, because they are the people, citizens of like the community, because these decisions that they may take, they do include them. So all the implemented policies like skills development, because we are the mostly affected, which is the citizens. So currently in South Africa, there was a collegium, if I'm correct. There was a collegium. So in that collegium, there was basically the NDCs where there was like just like meditating and discussing like ways to actually adapt, you know. So and also we spoke about the just transition plan, which is to address the needs of communities, like issues like unemployment, especially for our youth. The parties that will be involved obviously are like government, national, provincial, local stakeholders, and laborers, talking like businesses, municipal. They are the implementers, and definitely this is proof because there are people from like those departments. And we also spoke about like the NDCs, that whatever that was discussed, are they legally binded to actually, make sure they see through whatever was discussed and make sure that it was implemented. And also, there was just an interesting topic that we dwelled in and we got more insight on, which was the SRM, speaking about like climate change, because climate change is already changing faster than like we actually thought. And also it affects us as Africa, and we spoke about why this matters to Africa. And it is confirmed that Africa is the most vulnerable to climate change, and we must understand the impact because we are in Africa. So why the SRM was discussed was because of the Paris target of track emission is actually slow, and there is a risk of exceeding tipping point, meaning that this thing it's like in the boiling point. That's why we need to actually be aware of it. And SRM is explored as an additional risk management. It's not a solution. It's just to manage the risk that is with the climate change. So what is SRM? SRM is actually a reflection of a portion of sunlight to cool the planet. So it is seen as a temporary emergency option rather than a replacement for the mitigation. So it's something that they can use to actually manage the risk of climate change. So we discussed also like the techniques of the SRM, which is the stratospheric aerial injections. Another one was marine cloud brightening, circus cloud thinning. And the techniques that was we actually dwelled on was the SAI. The SAI is basically stratospheric aerial injection. So it's basically like how they're actually going to like do it it's definitely the SRM technique that they're going to actually use out of the techniques, the 3 techniques. So they said it's like a volcano analogy, like the Mount Pinatubo, which there was an analogy that was displayed to see what happened in Mount Pinatubo. And the injection through the stratosphere, which is basically in the middle of like the planet, and they just injected, like, let's say in the middle of the planet, the equators, they just injected to cool the planet, But also it sparked a lot of conversations because it also has like its own controversy, because if you remember, it's something that affects Africa mostly, So the conversations are also about how are the other, regions of the world, going to receive this, because it's also like a risk on itself, So it was also a topic that we dwelled in. So the SIA, they're just injecting reflective particles, as we said. There is SRM is something that reflects portion of sunlight. So that's what is SRM, which is basically the solution of the climate change, but it's a temporary thing. So we also got information about how like science shows, what science shows in terms of globally modeling temperature, which means it's like its own whole like global scale now. It's no longer something that is gonna be about only Africa, which is the most affected. So we went through a lot of, okay, I'm just gonna touch on the main topics. The SRM techniques, it has also its limitations, you know, so there's like a way of doing things when it comes to these techniques being implemented. And what also science says, global to local like impact of the SRM. And the global impacts, which are like precipitation, while the SRM may reduce like extreme like rainfall in some regions, it also brings the risk of drying other regions, especially across like tropics, which could pose serious challenges for water availability. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm just gonna touch on that. Yeah, there was just basically the main topic, the SRM, which was the solution for the climate change, and also addressing like the issues that are we are facing as communities and the citizens of the country, which is the most common one is unemployment. So I'm actually glad that there's an opportunity like this where we as young people can be involved, because I already see it's not only the huge institutions like universities that are actually involved, there's also like community people that are actually invited. So it's a huge honor to be here, and yeah, looking forward to the rest of the conference.
Now, before you go, you did not tell us your name.
Okay. My name is Bongani Dlamini, and I'm from the Tsoranang organization based in the Vaal. Yeah, I'm also, I could say, an entrepreneur, a young aspiring entrepreneur, because I like to believe in this economy, the solution is to actually add value to it by just creating like jobs, instead of like, saying there isn't. Why don't we actually have that mindset of creating jobs? Thank you.
Thanks. Now the panelists will come back. I suspected you were an entrepreneur when I saw the suit. Thank you very much, Dlamini. There is somebody designated to represent the postgraduate students. They are still going to speak in, but I thought that, who's that? From VUT. Can I see the VUT postgraduate students that are in here, not the guests? Raise your hands. So the students have boycotted. And they left, they said they're coming to the symposium. They are afraid to speak, so they've decided they'd rather be punished for absenteeism than to speak. But I'm gonna get somebody here. Maybe let's get to Nontutuzelo to just come and give us the broader view about the organizing environment for South African youth on climate change, G20, and the global discussion around climate change, prosperity, and environment. And I think on that, after that, we'll then call in question, or then we'll take Lindiwe, then I'll call the three of them back here to come and then take a Q&A, and then I'll pick up one of the VUT students or another university. I can pick up Limpopo or Fort Hare, unless you all end up going to send up that none of us are students, which I don't think you'll survive. So for every trick, there is a counter trick. So somebody's going to come here and speak on behalf of postgraduate students. It's a matter of time. But with those ways, let me call Nontutuzelo Nikiwe from Lekoi. And on behalf of the youth, I just want to say to the old people, sorry for the inconvenience. We're trying to change the world.
Are you the youth? Okay, good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nontutuzelo Nikiwe, and I'm representing ALCOY, it's the Local Conference of Youth, and we are organized under the structure of the UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, and that structures a specific organizing structure under that is specifically focused on youth, which is the Conference of Youth, that is the global collective, and then at a local level we've got the Local Conference of Youth, which then focuses on regional work around climate change. And so speaking about the organizing capacity of young people around climate change, one of those structures is the Local Conference of Youth. So we are organized under a variety of youth-led organizations and youth development organizations. So they are structured under an initiative of the World Economic Forum, which is the Global Shapers. And then outside of that is then also a number of climate organizations and nonprofits in the country, one of them being Africa Climate Action and a whole bunch of others. So we've got a collective of youth-led organizations that are working around this space to specifically ensure the inclusion of young people in climate action. So in first knowing what to do, but mainly in organizing our actions around that. So it's grown to be quite a big collective. It was in 2021, it was really just the Global Shapers, and so it has grown beyond that with the support of the city and now also endorsement from other organizations who have supported the structuring of what it is now under the Local Conference of Youth as a broader organizing team. And this is specifically now for South Africa. So there's different ALCOYs across the region, across the world really. So we recently also were supporting the Local Conference of Youth in Botswana as well, and then last year we participated in the Regional Conference of Youth in Zambia as well, under the specific representation rather of ALCOY in the regional context. So it's local first, right? So South Africa, and then regional. So looking at Southern Africa, Central, and then Northern Africa, and then as I say, across the world as well, in the different regions as well. Those are organized under the same mandate, and then. Just before the Conference of the Parties, which is COP, which is taking place in Brazil this year. Just before that is then the Conference of Youth, which takes place a week before, and that is bringing together all the ALCOYs and the RCOYs, and then they come together in Brazil to prepare a youth statement that will be presented at the COP conferences every year. So speaking to that, I just want to kind of create opportunity or an avenue, especially for postgraduates or even undergraduate students who want to participate. There are a lot of avenues through the ALCOY where you can support the organizing. So in that, you then get the benefit of first of all, learning about, the different ways of engaging in climate action across the country, but also in terms of policy, the kinds of policies that South Africa is adopting around climate change, and also how we are responding to the different challenges around the just energy transition, which is the focus of the ALCOY this year, is one of the focus areas of the ALCOY this year. So in that participation, we also have participated in the Y20, which is linked to the G20. So last week we were at the Y20 specifically talking about the just energy transition and looking at things like urbanization and what does that mean for young people, skills development, the challenges that are there in terms of closing the gaps, especially or one of the topics of discussion was around how the universities are responding to the gaps that are needed in terms of skills, specifically to the courses that are available at universities. Not many of them are specifically focused on developing skills around people who can respond to the needs of the just energy transition, right? So, and then also looking at the social protection. So, as Abut Blessing mentioned, that we are also there's some students from the humanities here. So that's one of the things, is that a lot of people are vulnerable to climate change, as the previous speaker also mentioned as well. So in that vulnerability, we're talking about especially women, especially children, and other marginalized groups, and how can social protections be built around them. So as he mentioned as well, it's not just around, the engineering of the just energy transition, but also ensuring that there are sufficient social protections and responses to ensuring that people who are most vulnerable to climate change, whether it's physically in terms of their proximity to, for example, climate disasters, or also in terms of mobility, being able to, for example, if there is a warning that comes in, extreme weather warnings and things like that, if they're able to actually physically leave the locations where their lives might be in danger, or their livelihoods, etc. And so with that also then is, when we're talking about social protections, we're thinking about the vulnerability to climate shocks and how we are able to better respond to those. So social systems need to be designed to be able to respond to that as well. And then looking at entrepreneurship as well, talking about, obviously again, coming back to the issue of skills development. In South Africa has very high youth unemployment rates, and so it's then looking at how are youth being included, first of all, in for example, structures like these, right, where young people are participating in the discussions, but more importantly, forming or rather participating in policy responses. And so that's why structures like the ALCOI exist, right? So we are specifically, it's completely youth-driven and directed by youth, and so representative of youth issues in different urban settings as well. So it's then looking at what are youth saying about the challenges that they are facing. And so at a regional level as well, so that's why there's a regional structure, and then there's the international structure, which happens right before COP. It's to then consolidate all of those issues from the global north, from global south, and everywhere else. It's then looking at what are the main challenges that many young people are facing. And so we as South Africa consider our unique position as having very high unemployment rates, especially among youth, and how can we ensure that the just energy transition is designed to respond to those kinds of challenges as well. And then the last thing I want to kind of touch on is then issues around investment or social investments to improve access to information as well. And I think that's the role, again, that higher institutions of higher learning have a role in participating in, and as well as researchers, right? So as researchers at a postgraduate level, for example, where, our research and again, coming back to the humanities, because I'm also a humanities postgraduate student. So I think for me, it's important for us as people in the humanities to understand that we have a specific perspective on how we are creating inclusionary practice around this work, right? So it's not just the technical aspects of the just transition that are needed. It's really looking at people. How is it affecting people? How are people going to be protected under these structures? And coming back again to the issue of skills development, how are we ensuring that even young people who don't have access to institutions of higher learning are able to engage in these structures? So whether it's locally based youth organizations that are being brought in to these engagements, and that's again what ALCOI does, is that we are specifically ensuring that underrepresented organizations and youth structures are able to participate, and where they don't even have the information, that we teach, right? So there's lots of engagements around training and providing people with access to information so that they know how to participate in these structures, but also understand how it affects them. Because many people don't have the language, they may know that, their area is prone to flooding, for example, but they don't necessarily know that this is something, how do they need to kind of prepare for it in the future? How is the municipality, their local municipality, responsible to supporting them in that? And how can they engage the local municipality in ensuring, for example, that there's better infrastructure to support the outflow of water or whatever else? So all of these things are organized under the structure of the ALCOI, and that's the organizing that we do with young people, and that's the participation then that we garner from different structures to support this work. work. So if you are interested in working with us or engaging with the ALCOI, you can come speak to me. I'm available. Or otherwise, my contact information can be made available, and we can support the work that is being done even at a university level to help in kind of creating structures that are organizing around climate action and the just energy transition. Yeah, so I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you still have a spare ticket to Brazil? No. I thought you were going to start a raffle competition and say the participants here, one of them can win a ticket to join COP30. But indeed, young people have played a very important role in the international negotiations. And some of us have literally grown up in the system. So sometimes the promises don't come quickly. I think I must also tell you that. I don't want to mention how many international conferences. Firstly, as a youth volunteer, now I'm in juvenile retirement. But 1991, we were sitting in Brazil at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, the Rio Earth Summit. 2002, it came to South Africa as the World Summit on Sustainable Development. 2012, it went back to Rio as the Rio Plus 20. You know, the Kyoto Protocol was signed 20 years ago, just before when Al Gore was still deputy president of the US. So some of these international negotiations take time, but they'll even take longer if young people are not at the center of finding a solution. So I'm sure we look forward to collaborating. Before I open up the floor, I want to call Lindiwe to come and tell us how many young people are going to lose jobs as petrol attendants and when we are using electric cars. From a skills point of view, should we continue to train mechanics when you know that half of the township's mechanics will disappear in 10 years? No. On a serious note, Lindiwe's manager just transitioned, senior manager just transitioned at the PCC, and she facilitates what we would call hardcore interventions in responding to the emerging issues, skills, innovation, etc. Ms. Johnson, and social ownership, by the way. Thank you very much. Lindiwe.
I don't
You're
have,
speaking.
I'm
Yeah.
just speaking.
You're an academic. You speak from.
Good morning, everyone. As my fierce colleague has already introduced me, my name is Lindiwe Johnson, and I am the Senior Manager for Just Transition at the PCC. I think he has misled me because I was under the impression that we're going to have a dialogue and a discussion. But since I'm up here, I'll just share a little bit about some of the work that we're doing and some of the key ways I think that higher education needs to play a key role in the space, in the skills development space, but also in understanding how do we prepare young people adequately for the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead that we have, still have to prepare for. So I now quickly put together a couple of points just to kind of set the tone. So please bear with me as I walk through them as well. So I mean, the PCC is really at the forefront to try and ensure that that we are working towards a low carbon and climate resilient economy, not only for the environment, but also so that we have sound and socially just and inclusive policies, information and research that basically inform how we move forward. And as a central pillar, skills is a key aspect of that, because the success of a just transition ultimately depends on our preparedness and our people's ability to transfer, but also participate meaningfully in this transitioning economy. And so as South Africa, we obviously face this major mountain of a challenge of a coal-based economy that is shifting to a resource-intensive and resource-intensive sectors, while we need to open up new opportunities around renewables, new energy vehicles, green manufacturing, and also climate-smart agriculture. And so these these kind of demands request us to really think deliberately about how do we equip workers, how do we ensure that we equip communities and also young people especially, so that we have skills that are able to thrive in emerging landscapes. And so as the PCC, we kind of have played a very strong convening role in specifically the skills environment, where we have focused very much on thinking through what are some of the impacts that we need to prepare for as we think about a just transition, but also climate change. And so currently we're leading research on better understanding the impact of a just transition on employment in South Africa, focusing specifically on distributional outcomes and implications for inequality. Because I think as we're moving, as we are progressing, even though we would skill people, we need to ensure that the skilling is aligned with what the future job market is and labor market is able to absorb. And so the study then looks at, individual and household aspects, effects, looking both at micro and macro modeling results, which then feeds into two other reports which will focus specifically on skills and also social protection. And in the skills research, we're looking at specifically how do we ensure that we have the necessary levers around skills for a just transition. So how do we strengthen that, but also how do we ensure that the collaboration between various educational stakeholders actually support one another rather than erode the strategy. And in South Africa, where we have a skill system that's very complex, we needed to ensure that we create a coherency around policy, but also coherency around what are some of the key national strategies that we need to undertake. Because previously, or not previously, but what was happening in the space was that there was a lot of small initiatives that were happening around skills, a lot of initiatives that each and every key educational stakeholder is driving, but in their nicheness and smallness, what we lacked was actually to start developing a national skills agenda. And what has been quite commendable over the past few years is having to see exactly how higher education and other stakeholders have started working together on this coherency and coordination within the skill structure. This was specifically pushed and driven more purposefully through what my colleague earlier mentioned, the JET Skill Desk. So if you have read the Just Energy Transition Implementation Plan, there is a chapter 9, which specifically looks at how do we start building coherence and coordination around skills, and how do we make sure that our current institutional structures are supporting one another, working through their differing mandates. So through the JET Skills Desk, we work as an advisor. We have a dedicated function, and that desk is essentially looking at a three-tiered system that then focuses on skilling at various levels, but also providing necessarily policy recommendations where and if necessary. So ideally, we're trying to look at how do we track and analyze emerging skills needs in transition economy. How do we facilitate dialogues between departments like your CETAs, industry and communities? How do we start identifying gaps in the skills pipelines and recommend policy interventions? How do we also start supporting the integration of social justice principles, ensuring that we actually speak to the three key principles, guiding principles of the just transition? And so that structure really is looking at how do we prepare, build in that necessary preparedness as a country, having one common national vision to actually drive skills development around a just energy transition. Now, even though we have a clear pathway around just energy transition, we need to apply the same type of vigor and systemic thinking when we think about the other climate-related challenges. And what we are seeing is that we're also looking at how do we start thinking about jobs around climate resilience, adaptation, and climate adaptation, and looking at where are some of those key entry points, specifically at grassroots level, which actually offers an opportunity for entry-level job opportunities, both in low skills to a skilled worker, which is essentially where that unemployment is highest in our country. The opportunity that the climate resilience and adaptation space actually offers is that it actually offers us both a community lens, but also the opportunity for community education and training centers to really participate in how we think about a just transition around agriculture, around adaptation, and around climate adaptation. So we have new ways of thinking about scaling and also skills development. Where higher education plays a key role is really to think through how do we create the necessary access points for multi-entry points for young people, but also people who are needing to be reskilled and upskilled. You guys are also clear leaders in creating, being leading agents in being on the forefront of research and innovation around what does our skills formation system need and how do we effectively respond to the various challenges that our climate change and just transition presents. So as young people, we need to be able to understand all of the institutional gaps, but also the skilling gaps, and how do we effectively think about ourselves not as an external party of the transition, but actually inclusive of the just transition. So there's more I can probably say, but I really do want to edge on the fact that higher education plays a critical role in ensuring that we are at the forefront of research. I think what is commendable in South Africa is that, and I'm currently writing a case study on the South African skills formation system, speaking to what we have done to date to ensure that we are moving our skills ecosystem in a way that allows for us to respond to a just transition. And I think what has been commendable just doing the research currently is to see how different partners in the space have actually come together to start working on that national agenda. I think that is very commendable, and we have all kinds of stakeholders participating in this process. We have a clear voice from higher education that speaks on its key challenges of multi-entry, developing programs that have multi-entry points, looking at the key challenges around RPL, where we actually have to rethink how we think about RPL for a transition, where you have workers of differing levels of skills, and how do you create that environment, and thinking through entry-level multi-leveled skilling opportunities for people to learn and for people to engage with information, especially at a community level, while you're dealing with challenges like your climate adaptation and climate resilience type of projects. In that vein, I kind of want to end there. I think as we move forward, we really need to think about how do we champion as organizations that, as institutions and organizations that champion a specific need, but also needing to respond to a national agenda that has, that actually has, that is basically positioning us for a longer and this new economic transformation ahead of us. But thank you so much.
Before you go, Lindy, when is the skills in Daba?
Oh, okay.
We want to attend.
So maybe I can just quickly share that. So we have our annual Skills in Daba, and it's happening on the 30th of October. We will, for those who cannot attend in person, we will be live streaming it. So you will be able to participate in a hybrid format as well. It's happening on the 30th of October, and we've kind of defined 3 key themes for the specific Indaba, looking at how do we start building, how do we support our institutional and institutionalize the skills for a just energy transition. We're also looking at how does research become, how do we strengthen our research in the for skills planning, but also looking at your labor market alignment, curricular reform, and employment engagement, so that you have data that actually is reflective of downstream rather than just looking at the immediate needs. Then we have a session that will focus specifically around skills for social protection and care, adaptation and community resilience. And then lastly, we'll have a session that will focus specifically on advancing skills for a green industrialization. How do we start creating a workforce that is ready for the new emerging sectors like green hydrogen, NEVs, basing it on reports, master plans like the Sarum master plan, and so forth.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Belinda. We are 3 minutes to tea. I thought we'd have a working tea. It's not going to fly. So I want to suggest the panelists that were here, Nontutuzelo, Dlamini, and Lindiwe, bring your chairs here before we go into tea. So, but also to save them. When you go to tea, you might find that you don't own that chair anymore. So bring your chairs here. When we come back from tea in about 15 minutes, we'll then take a Q&A session. And I've not seen the VUT postgraduate rep. I'm going to pick up another person from another university. And I'm told Professor Dr. Lombuzo Shabalala was prepared to join that. He's from UNISA. So when we come back, Dr. Lombuzo Shabalala will join the panel to take Q&A, particularly on the research. And she's a doctor of philosophy, so she'll not be speaking words and volts. She'll be speaking people and society as well. So those colleagues will come here. Just to announce before we go on tea, on Friday there is the launch of the JET, the Just Energy Transition Skills Desk by the Minister of Higher Education. We'll also circulate the invite. I think is it close already? We'll make a plan. No, when a comrade says we make a plan, you must know you're going to be fired from that event. But I think it has got hybrid. We'll share for colleagues to follow, but to even look into the future consultations. But let me thank my panelists for the presentations. When we come back, they'll be in the firing squad. Then we'll take that interactive discussions. But when we come in, I also want some of you to stand up and say, I'm a researcher in this area. This is the kind of research I'm doing, and this is how I'm thinking it's contributing to climate action in the context of engaging with the panel. It's 25 past 11. Past 11. Let's be back at 22:12. Then we've got about an hour for the interactive discussion. Then after that, Muresi from the PCC will then give us an overview of what are the options for continuing collaboration in adaptation, in investment and all that. Then we'll craft some way forward. But thank you very much. Mark your chair. But enjoy your coffee, colleagues. Mpumalanga, and VUT as well. We can do Somarokho in Great University of Great Zimbabwe there. But I think that because she has worked in a number of institutions, she probably represents that. Mrs. Lombuzo, just briefly come in for about 3 minutes and just tell us what is the scope of the research agenda in the country, particularly around climate action, and what are some of the constraints? What do you need from public institutions like government or industry in supporting that kind of research? Because I know that postgraduate studies and research is probably one of the most expensive activities in the academic world. You've got to take taxis, the budget for research is very thin, and you must also top up those other people that you are going to hire to write for you at night. So the budgets get quite very, very expensive. But with that, Dr. Shabalala, come through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. All protocol observed, as our chair indicated. They said you must be forever ready, and I've missed the point. Today it caught up with me. Just to touch a bit, I'll be just touching there and there, touch and go. Please time me. I'm getting paid to talk. Okay. So 3 minutes I may. Yes, so I'll just touch and go based on the few pointers that our chair just indicated. As institutions of higher learning, we are regarded as these Eiffel Towers, that we are not in touch with our communities. And as institution, we know our mandate is to teach, do research, and also do community engagement. We tend to focus on the teaching and research and forget this one where we have to do our engaged research and do community engagement, which also assists us to tie nicely with the agenda of today where we talk about climate change. And one of our speakers touched on vulnerable people who are affected by this, which is mainly women and children. When we do our research to say, do we take that into account and embed that? The good thing with UNISA, we have niche areas, which one of those niche areas is a Basadi theorization, to say now we must put forefront our women when it comes to this tourism, because women have a role to play when it comes to navigating and also mitigating the challenges that we are faced with. Just to touch a few, my area of focus, I'm more on cultural heritage tourism. That is one area that maybe we believe that climate change does not affect us. It does, because we've got the tangible and intangible resources. Mainly the tangible ones, they're exposed out there. Now we've got also marine. We have this marine cultural heritage below the sea, which are being affected by these conditions. Therefore, what is our role as students, as researchers, and also as organizations, especially the youth? We are crying that there's no employment. How do we integrate tourism into this? Because remember, when we talk tourism, we are talking about business. Let's make money using our assets that we have while we conserve and protect those assets. One of the big things that we need to do is to deal with these issues that are brought by climate change, because they affect the authenticity of our product and services. They also affect the availability. We talk to the supply and demand of our products that we are selling to our tourists, not only our tourists, even yourselves. You take vacation leaves. You want to go and see something, now you come to Kruger. You want to see the Big Five, now you don't see the Big Five, you only see one, because elephant is always around. Now you don't feel you've received value for money, isn't it? You feel somehow robbed. Now the tour guide will tell you, no, your 2 hours is finished. Like, just like that. We haven't seen anything because it's too hot. Where the animals, they're hiding there. Sometimes the animals are not there because there's no water. Those dams around there that are created so that the animals can come are dry. Floods, we've seen it in the news, Kruger. I'm sure you remember there were roads that were temporarily closed. People couldn't access. What does that mean? Cancellation of bookings. What does it mean when you cancel bookings? It means money is being taken back by those internationals, locals yourself. You've booked your vacation and said, no, now we're not going to Kruger because it's temporarily closed because of flooding. Which are the challenges that we are facing through climate change and global warming? What I'm trying to say, these challenges are not only affecting us as academics or business, they also affect our people because there are people living around those boundary of those protected sites. So if me and you are able to stay wherever we are, what about those people? One of our speakers touched on I can call it the alarms to say people they are aware to say this is taking place. Let's move these people because a flood is coming or a big rain is coming. These people have nowhere to go, and most people who are affected is the young kids, people living with disability, and women. Yes, we understand you, our fathers and our brothers, you get affected, but you know, you are warriors, you have ways of surviving and protecting us, in an African context. So with that said, I believe the agenda of today is very important, and we need to align ourselves and put together research projects, because I'm happy I've seen one of the items paving a way forward to say, what type of research do we put together? And this research must not be research that will sit on our laptops. Before, when we used to print and say collect dust, this one must not just sit in the system and be forgotten. It must try and address the real needs that is affecting our people and push our agenda forward. As our speaker, manager, spoke to us that we are moving forward. How prepared are we with this new change? Because sometimes we say we don't want the change. We are scared to say if this change comes where I am, I'm going to lose my job. Instead, how do I align myself with the change that is coming? Thank you very much.
That's why it's always good to call professors unprepared. Then they say the right things. Hey, there is a funeral next door. Can somebody help us, next door? Yes, but thanks a lot, colleagues. We want now, and indeed what you have said about tourism, it has affected. Table Mountain was burning, Cape Town lost lots of money. Then there was day zero, Cape Town with no water, Cape Town lost. Then there was the floods, the Durban beachfront was a no-go area. There is heat, you can no more visit some parts of the Mpumalanga that used to have Sekunda Mbalenhle. It's called Mbalenhle, but there's no more flowers, because of the heat. The Northern Cape, it's a new area, but if we put up solar panels in the entire, people might not want to visit the Northern Cape for the sand dunes. In the Eastern Cape, people were saying don't mind titanium because people come to see the sand dunes. That is what they come to do, some of the landscape. So you might think that is not affecting tourism and heritage. The ruins of Zimbabwe, one of the seven wonders of the world, people don't visit there. So you can find any cultural or heritage space that does not get affected by tourism, by climate change. You will not find it because those are generally fragile environments, But also the airline industry, with carbon emissions, you're going to start seeing the prices of flights getting expensive because you'll never do an electric aeroplane. I assume, Lindy, there'll never be an NEV. I don't want to have an aeroplane in mid-air saying that the battery is finished. It will be a disaster of massive proportions. So we've got to appreciate that certain things have got to adapt. Yeah, I mean, even people even doubt electric cars, but I don't want to be stuck on the N1 on my way to Moria in Limpopo. So there are general challenges about adaptation and moving forward. So we've got to keep up with the times, but also tariffs. When there's nothing else to tax, tourism will be taxed because it's an export. You're going to end up, and when people were saying that the Americans were bringing the tariffs, I started saying, imagine when they're going to start taxing Cape Town wine. A lot of people visit the wine routes because they want to take our wine with. So there are many things that gets affected by climate change. So the tourism sector must be well poised. But also when people are going to start calling for green events or carbon neutral events. I know with the World Cup we did it. We had a slogan that said, "Don't kick the grass, kick the ball," which basically meant keep the environment intact even if in major tourism events. So there is quite a lot of things that we could learn from. And maybe one of the research topics would be how green are our events, not just only park and ride. Because the most we do in South Africa is just say park and ride, and they are more for convenience rather than emissions. So I think that the tourism sector and a lot of other sectors can do a lot. Now the floor is yours, intelligent people of Africa. Fire. There is no roving microphone. I don't know what it is going to do to live. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I can hold it. I'll make sure you get it back. because I know we'll be charged extra if we lose some of this equipment. But thank you very much. You could just introduce yourself, tell us from which sector, university, or constituency, and then just raise your question or your comment.
Okay.
Or briefly share what kind of area of research you're involved in.
Okay, thank you.
What you think should be the next research area.
Thank you so much. My name is Thomas Karagadzai. I'm with the University of Cape Town, focusing on the influence of town planning tools on urban sustainability. My question here, there were interesting conversations from the team, but I have got a question to those who are actually coming from the community. I have realized that you noted and you had the framework for just transition. I would like to understand, as communities, what are the gaps you have encountered with these frameworks? You know, as postgraduates, our mandate is to conduct research which have got an impact to the community. Yes, the framework is there, but what is your take and what do you think as postgraduates in this room we can work on so that we improve this framework? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question? I can also close my eyes and point. Oh, there is a hand there. Thanks, Mkash. You got that, Netlamini? Yes. What are the gaps that the community wants the researchers to focus on to improve these frameworks? Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mpomolo Bella from the University of Limpopo.
My alma mater.
Yes, I'm from the Center of Global Change. We have a huge problem in my research. We are researching, writing papers and publishing, but we have a huge problem of adoption. I heard Doctor talking about community engagement. So I want to know, how do we ensure that our research is being adopted by our farmers? Thank you.
Thanks. Awesome. Another.
Maybe Morosi can also address that one.
Yeah, from an adaptation point of view. Yes. Thanks. Another hand? Oh, just there. Yes, behind you.
Sanbonan.
Yeah.
Now my name is Yamkela Zikizela. I'm from O2 Greenie, the environmental organization next to R28 Koporik. So now I'm in this part of rehabilitation. I want to know the value adding on the resources after we have preserved them. And I want to also know about the critical raw materials. How can maybe we add value and take part there in value adding?
Thanks. Lindy, you'll handle critical minerals from the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan. Half of the stuff that you're going to be using come from critical minerals. All the things you use in batteries, in solar panels, yes. It's not just copper. So it's not just this nyoga. There's rare earth metals there that we need.
My name is Margaret Jones, coming from the University of South Africa, and my focus area is on traditional authorities. It's my favorite subject. Lindy, I have a question for you. The bigger portion of South Africa is actually managed by traditional authorities. And when you look in terms of the skills gap in the traditional authority space, they are actually far behind when it comes to development and when it comes to them being put abreast in terms of what is currently happening. In your research or in your engagement, how are you engaging the traditional authorities? They are actually also managing communities. So they are managing communities with less knowledge in terms of what is the current affairs. So how do we actually assist you to be able to bridge that gap between the communities, the traditional authorities, and also especially in the skills in Daba that you are going to be planning? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've had about 4 questions. Do you want to have the panel? Traditional authority is quite a very good issue. Otherwise, if the traditional leader just say there's no climate change, this thing is caused by witchcraft or God, we're in trouble. You remember the old Xhosa story of Ngauze? Is it not Ngauze? Yes, so you don't want people to start saying, kill all your cows, there is a big storm coming. And because Hamakosi, we all listen to them, and there is no storm, and there we are hungry, or all with just biltong, because we would have killed all our livestock. Yes, there is a hand here, the last one, from the gentleman there, from VUT.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Uchiro Mkulamago. I've got an interest in rural tourism, and I've heard my learning colleague talking about things that has to do with tourism. So maybe just to give a preamble, in rural tourism, nowadays we see emergency of small businesses. For instance, you find members of the communities as a result of places such as your Mpumalanga, your Limpopo, wherein youth are starting businesses, selling food. And when they prepare those food, they are using natural resources. They go and collect firewood. And this speaks very well with the theme of this sitting today. Because that on itself, you find that it may lead to deforestation. It may lead to global warming. It may lead to us having severe heat waves. So just to cut a long story short, may you please just share with us what are the things that you feel need to be done in order to conscientize those members of the communities, those youth that are involved in business, based on the fact that they are trying by all means to sustain their livelihood, but on the other side, they are impacting on the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You don't have questions, so but you are going to answer. You can answer the future question in anticipation. Lindy.
Thank you so much. Okay, so maybe just to focus on the first question regarding the minerals and I guess beneficiation and where to benefit. So we have the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan, which was actually approved by Cabinet in this year. And it's really looking at how do we coordinate and localization of our renewable energy sector, focusing specifically on the wind, solar, battery, the battery sector, and I think green hydrogen as well. And so I think what is important for us to consider is and the opportunity that maybe lies in the way the value added can actually happen is in that vanadium and lithium vanadium battery based batteries value chain. So we already have recognized and identified that this is a key point for us to access, because it already is recognized as a critical mineral in South Africa. Now there is quite a bit of legislation around it, but I think the opportunities of beneficiation outweighs the parameters that's around it. And I think for us is to also recognize market. We do have to recognize our market spaces. Where in the value chain, at least in battery, do we then position ourselves as South Africa and start beneficiating from that point. And I think having the mineral is the first point, but also thinking through what other value chains and what other markets do we need to access. So we now know that obviously Asia is a big importer of minerals like vanadium because of manufacturing around cell phones and the battery sector and all other components. So it's really thinking through how do we actually access those markets as well. So I would encourage you to actually look at the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan, because it does set out clear areas of opportunities within the value chain and localization for the various streams of renewable energy. We understand that we have a skill deficit and in South Africa, but also we also know that the opportunity of certain elements outweigh others, and so we need to basically play where we are strong, and we need to work at the parts where we're actually very strong. And I think it is at the fact where we have access to minerals like vanadium, which is actually key for our decarbonization strategy, not just for South Africa but for the rest of the world as well. So this might not have responded to the question exactly, because I think the question that you're asking requires a bit more of an engagement, but it definitely at least aligns us with how do we need to start positioning ourselves and identifying the key opportunities that exist within the renewable energy sector, so that we are clear on what are we able to do with our skill sets, with the resources that we have, and how do we basically export that as a key resource and opportunity. Should I answer the next question, or shall I?
I just wanted a specific question to you before you then answer the. What does it mean for communities, particularly for the new minerals, so that they don't cause new conflicts or they don't displace old communities? Because that has been the biggest challenge, that you're going to start mining where people never thought you'd mine, and you're just going to have fresh new displacements. And maybe the researchers would also help us. How do you make sure that movement into green minerals does not displace communities again? They might not be polluted, but they might move, unlike coal. So how do you make sure that communities buy into and understand that this new mining means something for them?
I mean, it is also linked back to the practices that we've adopted over the years. I think, first of all, we need to, in general, I think there has been overall good buy-in into these types of projects. But where we have lacked is always on the front of making sure that community ownership is key to those types of to these mining rights. So I think I say think, but there is an overall gear towards not necessarily disrupting our environment. And I think right now what we have established is really good understanding of why there is a need for environmental preservation, but also understanding that we are in somewhat of an industrialization phase of our decarbonization journey. And so it's going to be a bit of a dance between making sure that we get the necessary we get the necessary critical minerals out, but also how do we make sure that that environmental preservation is key to our adoption of maybe new minerals and so forth. And so there's quite a bit of work to understand where a lot of these mining sites are. I think a key piece of work is obviously our EIA processes that basically inform whether or not the region is mineable. And then critically is that adoption of community, whether or not they actually want that action in their community. And therein lies that community awareness, but also community education to make sure that they understand what will be the overall impacts of a mining site being developed in a specific region. I think we saw that very, very clearly when we had the LP gas on the coast of the Eastern Cape, where the community had the necessary knowledge. We had civil society very involved in making sure that the community is aware of, even though this opportunity might present jobs, there is a loss of environmental preservation. And so that dance between making sure that we are moving towards an industrialization development and making sure we have community awareness, not just on the job fronts, but also what that means in the long run for a community is going to be critical. Yeah.
Thanks. Prof.
All right, thank you very much, Chair. I'll start with a question from our sister from UL. We are guilty as institutions of higher learning, as I've indicated when I was presenting, of being viewed as ivory towers. We are not connecting to our people. Because one of the things you indicated to say, how can you get the farmers to adopt the findings of your research? The first question will be, are these farmers part of your study? Because if they are not part of the study, already there's a challenge there. They won't see this study as their own, so that to say, we were not consulted about this, we don't know anything, but now we are expected to implement what this study is saying. Sometimes maybe you conduct a study that it doesn't really need their contribution per se directly, but to consult and inform them to say, we are here in the area, we are doing this type of a study. Once we are done with the study, we'll come back and maybe give you a feedback of what we are working on. Then you can also contribute moving forward. Because one thing that DHEAD, which is DHEAD and also NRF and other organizations, they encourage us to give back give feedback to our communities on the findings of our studies. But also you cannot just come give feedback while we didn't consult them in the beginning, so that they contribute. One thing I've realized when I was doing a study in Mapungubwe, doing a case of the descent of Mapungubwe, the study that I was investigating, actually they had a burning matter than what I was focusing on. Now, sometimes it's not a matter that they don't want. They have a bigger challenge than what you are bringing on the table. Hence, consultation, which I believe we know the difference between consultation and engagement. Consultation is key, so that they feel part and they own what we are doing. And these are the people who can also even sometimes direct you to the right areas to get rich data for your study. So I think our methodologies, that's where we need to revisit and also ensure that after the study, we give feedback to these communities as we do in our institutions and our funders. Because sometimes we don't do that. We only go there now. We want them to implement, we want them to adopt. They won't do that. As much as ourselves, we wouldn't appreciate someone just to come at the end to say, we've done this, we approve it, implement. That's where there'll be a friction. One of the things we'll talk more after this, then I'll just give you examples of how I've managed some of my projects, which we also had farmers around the Mapungubwe area. We'll touch more on that afterwards. Then coming to also the methodology. Now, since the study is already done, because now we need to look at what do we do now, because you believe that the findings is going to assist. It will be good to identify the people that these farmers respect and also listen to, because there are organizations there that can assist you. Like one of the things, there's a study we are doing in the Bushbuck Ridge area. We identified even the municipality. Also the LED forum, because I'm sure they belong to other forums that you can go and engage. You say, we've done this study, we believe it's going to be beneficially like this. So the methodology and the people who are going to approach them also may play a role on assisting you, because the study is already there and it's something that you believe is going to be helpful, because they can assist you, especially the LED forums, because these farmers, they are business people, they affiliate around these chambers and all of that. They are part of that. The municipality, one way or the other, they are also assisting through their agri programs and all of that. Sometimes they even benefit through the municipality funders and all of that. They can assist you on how you can get them to sit down and listen. And obviously, one of the things that we've done, even ourselves, we were writing a project there for about 2 years. We realized that actually we don't have the vote of the CPAs. We put together an event where we invited only the CPAs because they want to feel respected, seen, and be validated. I think that maybe can assist, but we can engage further after this engagement. Coming to the question of my brother there, we have a serious problem when it comes to our people, especially those who are staying around the boundaries, go in these sites and they cut trees, they dig medicine, you know, some of the trees is for medicinal purposes, and they believe that if I get this root, it's gonna save my child, or if I drink this medication or this leaf I boil, I won't have a headache, you know. We know around the indigenous knowledge and system and way of doing things. But now it becomes a challenge when they just come and cut, because there's a way of cutting a tree so that it can grow tomorrow and all of those areas. Now, the important thing is also the consultation and awareness programs. And this consultation must be in a true sense, because most of the time we just say we've done consultation, but we're just ticking a box. We didn't do a thorough consultation. Now, when we do this awareness program, we should be able to talk to the people and address the real problem that is going on there. For example, we visited Mariskop. Mariskop, there are people who are staying not far from the area. They are struggling with the grazing land. But when they see the mountain, they see the area, like, this is our forefathers' land. Remember, we have the bring back the land. We've got the claim, you know, and all of these things. And some people are already in the process of holding the title deeds, you know. So it becomes a danger. Now, one of the things they've done in Mariskop, which we appreciated, they demarcated a small piece of land for the local people as a grazing land, and they are able to monitor it environmental-wise. So what I'm trying to say here, us as people who are in the decision-making position as a protected site and all of that, we should be able to find a way, how do we meet these communities halfway? Because they go in there because they believe, if I get this, I'm gonna be able to be capacitated. And now, if we are saying don't cut the tree, don't shoot the good and go and cook at home, what is their benefit? They want to see tangible benefits, socio-economic wise. Usually we look the social, we don't look the economic. So how do we strike the balance there? So those are the things that we are faced with our people. And this deforestation, it's a serious problem. One of our protected sites has been closed down for commercialization because people have vandalized. Now we are having the coma, the initiation. About 3 or 4 initiations were identified in the site. And how do you do that? And one of them was identified because we were there as researchers walking around. We find women carrying woods, as my brother was saying. They cut the woods where? In the site. Now this one, we were asked, where are you going? He said, no, we are running away from the coma, that side, because she didn't go to school. If they catch you, you know what's happening. Now she was running away, coming to us, carrying the wood that is not supposed to be having at the first place. So it's a real challenge. We need to find on our policies, how do we meet our local communities in come to these issues, because we need them to assist us to look after these areas. They are staying in the boundary. They are the ones who see all these things happening. But what is their benefit in all of this? Thank you.
Thanks. But
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to answer the question coming from my brother idea, I think the gap is in the communication, because just transition is a process with policies that are written laws, and there are enforcements that are binding with, I would say, the upper level, instead for them to be able to see through that these policies do happen. Now, people who are actually supposed to delegate or give their communication to the grassroots, to the people who are actually vulnerable, like people are like community councils. Those people who take part of these decisions on behalf of the communities, which relates to like the role of the civil society organizations and grassroots. And with that being said, the civil society voices are often missing, basically, in such topics. So which means it's like they are excluded from such topics, as the speaker said, that these things they don't consult effectively, and you can't, if you didn't consult, you can't actually go there and just delegate, because in the first place you didn't include them. So that makes it hard for them. That's where the gap is, because inclusion, like, it builds like the trust and accountability and justice. So I think the gap is within the communication, basically.
Thanks. Do you want to say something? I know you didn't have a question straight fired at you, and mine will be difficult if I do it.
No, it's okay. I think I want to respond just to the question around the deforestation. I just want to add on what was just being said about social justice aspects. And so I think very often we apportion the responsibility of responding to climate change to people who are not the proponents of its cause, and the reason that it is at its magnitude right now. And so if you consider communities like, or rather provinces like Limpopo and Mpumalanga, where they are very high mining provinces, but when you consider the people who live around those mines, who first of all are not benefiting from any level of economic activity to a large extent, and also are not then receiving sufficient socioeconomic support on that front as well. And so we need to consider how we approach those kinds of things, because for them it's just a livelihood, and very often it's a livelihood that has been passed on from generation to generation. And so we then can't and so in the approach, a social justice perspective at the least, is to say then, how are we ensuring that corporations and large organizations that are the cause of climate change, which very often is affecting these communities directly in terms of things like, rainfall, where they're not getting the sufficient rainfall in their areas and so cannot grow food, for example, and so then have to find other ways of making money, but also finding food. And so it's then these considerations, and it's then saying, how are we ensuring that there is rather corporate support to these communities that is sufficient and is responsive to their needs, whether it's food security programs or ensuring that there are better ways for young people to find work. And so the programs need to be directed towards that. And the mines are, big polluters in these areas. And so it's just kind of that thinking. So granted, when we think about things like tourism, that there is an effect in terms of tourism that the deforestation and things like that affect tourism, and as a result, local economic development. But the bigger picture is not that the person who goes and grabs a couple of scraps of wood to create fire is the real challenge, or is the real problem. So it's in the framing of these challenges that we really need to think about, and how we are ensuring that people are supported in terms of, sure, given understanding and education, but also apportioning the responsibility to the right places, because they are not at fault. And very much, if you consider carbon emissions, etc., it's not even a dent in terms of the broader challenge of carbon emissions in any of these regions. So if we're talking about rural communities, it's almost nothing in terms of the carbon emissions that they are contributing to. And somebody was mentioning earlier that Africa is the biggest affected in terms of climate change, but the least emitting in the world. And again, I want to come back to the fact that South Africa is a very big emitter, even in the context of the continent and the context of the world, because of mining activities and other things. But in the greater picture, Africa is very much very low in terms of carbon emissions. So it's then saying the communities that are affected by these challenges, how are we treating them? Because they are not the problem, right? So it's then supporting them and ensuring that resources are then being directed to them, so that even if we want them to stop taking wood from the forests, then what are they doing otherwise? How are they going to live otherwise, right? Because it's very often the only choice that they have. So how are we ensuring that justice is then being served to those communities and those people? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nuntu. We've got Yeah, you see, this thing of being selfish. Now I want to use 2 microphones. And can we take another last round of questions, and the panel will respond, and then do some parting shots that Maurice will do as an overview way forward. Oh, the traditional authority question, you will respond to it when we take the second years.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. Okay, my name is Silon Tebe, and I'm a lecturer in tourism, but specifically in hospitality. So I'm very happy to have been here today. It's been an honor. And I was quite fascinated by the talk about climate change and preserving water and all of that. So I just want to find out in the framework about the switching or the preserving of resources. In terms of water usage, we obviously want to preserve water, but in tourism or hospitality, even in recent years, we see development after development, even years after we've raised the concern about water. Properties are being built, plumbing systems are still the same. Toilets use clean water, but there's a great example in Cape Town that the water from the showers can be diverted into a separate tank and be used to flush toilets and for irrigation. But it's strange that we haven't learned from those examples. We're still yet in a system where developers are not compelled, especially of those of hotels and shopping malls, to adapt their plumbing systems in such a way that we use less water. A single flush takes about 5 liters of water, which is not necessary. We could use recycled water for that from grey water. So I want to find out if there are efforts in terms of policy to compel developers to sort of rework their plumbing systems and so forth to help us preserve water, because at the end of the day, we're concerned about communities. If I'm using a Vasco Mohlap, and then the guy there uses a lot of water in a shower, they're using more water, but then I'm going to suffer, and yet they're not helping us to preserve water. So we need to look at it differently. So I'm just concerned about policy in terms of compelling developers to rework and to redesign their plumbing systems and things like that to ensure that we recycle water where we can, and instead of using clean water.
Thanks a lot. And energy. I mean, hotel rooms have got the largest number of globes. Like, who needs 6 lights before they sleep? Other question, but I think that we'll respond to. And golf courses that everybody else now, to show that you are rich, you must stay in an estate in a golf course, and you can't even play bloody guara. So there are serious issues about water resources and energy resources in the hospitality sector, but I think colleagues would answer more. Yeah. Are there 1 or 2 going? Yeah, there is a gentleman here, and there, and then the lady here, and then the gentleman here, then we'll come back to the panel.
Good day, everyone. My name is Lunika, and I'm a postgraduate student at the University of Fort Hare. So my question is, when we're talking about climate change, we're talking about a global challenge. And then when we're doing researches on climate change, we mostly go to rural areas in South Africa, right? So when we are making recommendations to these communities, to these rural communities who still depend on firewood and resources like that for their livelihoods, are we making recommendations that are context specific to those rural areas, or are we aligning those recommendations with policies from like global level? And then also when we're talking about frameworks for transition in South Africa, I understand that it has to align with global imperatives or international things like that. So when we are doing these researches, are we recommending things that are context specific, or we are becoming part of the bigger conversation around climate change? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This side.
Good day, everybody. Nalbitso la ka ke Mokgethi Khumalo. Ke tswa from an organization e bitswang O2 Green Economy. that resides in Borik. So I have a question and a statement to make. So South Africa Education and Training Provider must offer various courses relevant for a green economy. So my question to you, my sister, is what about the educational level entry? I believe for just energy transition to be just, it should offer courses to everyone, regardless of school performance. It should not only foster educated people, but also include uneducated people, because there are some who have skills. Basically, I could say me, I'm a young farmer in my community, but I don't have the qualification that states that I know agriculture, but I think the certificate will be in my hands. So how do we include those who have practical skills besides theories? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I saw with that hat that you're a farmer. Next colleague.
I'm Ujara Lakon Geoffrey from Uganda, and I'm on solid waste management. It has been a problem for us, especially in Kampala, those urban areas, and not the real city center, but the peri-urban areas. So, normally there are policies whereby you have these waste collectors given authority by the municipal to do the collection, but the community is not involved. So you find the drainage channels all clogged up. So in South Africa here, I know you have a system, we can handle that. Because I've been moving around. For the first day, I've been seeing cleanliness only on the streets. But how about the other areas?
I don't think you've arrived in South Africa.
How do you involve the community to come up at least with what they can adopt? Because it is really hard to change the mindset. They will tell you, who are you? We have been burning our rubbish. We have been burying it. Who are you to come and tell us to do it like this, like this, like this? So how do you change that mindset in research? That is where I'm heading with my research. I'm from Uganda Matters University.
Thank you very much. I don't think you arrived in South Africa. You must have started in Cape Town. It's South Africa, that's fine, yeah. Yes, the panelists, can we respond? And then as you respond, probably then give you a parting shot or your takeaway to the group. Thanks, those were quite interesting questions.
Thank you, Blessing. Maybe just to respond to the last question regarding traditional authority. I think as the PCC, obviously our role is to bring about various stakeholders into the space. And I think Tadema, Blessing, you will kind of just tell us a little bit more about like some of the communication and outreach work around reaching specific groups that obviously need to be engaged on different topics. But I think specifically thinking through how do we engage traditional authorities specifically on skills gaps. And it definitely is a challenge, but I think one of the clear ways, or at least as I recognize it, to reach these authorities is actually to have points of engagement with different, your community, it's called community,
Property Association, CPEs.
Yes, your CTEs. Really using your CTEs as points of hubs around informing, creating awareness, and also creating, having a better understanding of doing skills audits in your specific regions, so that you have a better understanding of what actually exists in the area, but also what responses can we, or what skills do we need to develop to respond to economic activity in the area, but also noting what other activities need to be responded to through recognizing clear opportunities for economic activity, and also skills needed. Sorry, not skills needed, but recognizing what skills could be developed in that area that would actually benefit that community sector. I do think that there needs to be some level of work done to engage those, the traditional authorities first, so that they have the necessary awareness of understanding why it's important to do that. And when I think about it, I think we would need to create some sort of climate hubs or awareness creation specifically around traditional authorities, so that there's both a parting of how do we bring how do we bring skills into your space and into your communities, but also what is it already in existence, what indigenous knowledge exists in that community that can actually solve for community needs or even the economic activities in the area. I think it's also quite what's also quite what we see now with how we are thinking about education, or at least how we're thinking about skills development, is that we really have to think about what multi-entry points do we need to create at different levels and different institutions, so that you are basically starting to reach further audiences. And this is now specifically looking at communities, specifically like in your rurals, where you don't necessarily have access to your bigger universities, but there might be a TVET, there might be a CETs. So we need to think about the multi-entry points, thinking through our skills programs that we start to develop, and how they actually are responding directly to community needs. And so a lot of the work that is currently being done around curriculum development and reform is thinking through that multi-entry point for learning, and so that learning doesn't just have one face, because I think what we've been what has been happening is that we assume that learning only happens in university, it only happens in a TVET, but there are other ways in other institutions that do other forms of learning and other means of learning, like your civil society organizations that are very proactive, sometimes in your communities, working directly either with the CETs, with the TVETs, and bringing that learning into a community space that might not have had it before. And so we really need to gather an understanding of how do we create multi-entry points of learning and skills development, so that we are reaching a larger audience, rather than just narrowing it on university and TVET, which sometimes are very centralized and very narrow, and don't actually then don't necessarily respond to the needs that we see in our rural settings. So I think that's maybe just kind of to respond, and maybe Blessing, you can kind of just give an overview of some of the thinking around how do we reach more groups that are on the outliers of our stakeholders, and also how do we start reaching those audiences to bring about the awareness, but also to bring about some of the principles that Just Transition speaks to. In response to the question regarding the education, the component around education, and how do we make sure that we create a mixed bag of education, another key area for South Africa to really focus on is on recognition of prior learning opportunities. Once again, that is it's an area we really need to look at, because I think in its current form, it doesn't really service those individuals who have probably worked for long years and are either stationed in very specific communities. We need to once again think through, and I think this is also one of the things that a lot of the a lot of the stakeholders, educational stakeholders that are working on either upskilling or reskilling opportunities are thinking about how do we create RPL processes that are responding to both people that have a low skill and only have a practical experience, but also at the same time people who have some learning, but majority of that learning is probably have done through the workplace learning effort. So how do we create curricula or programs that respond to the breadth of skill sets, practical learning, and also understanding of education as we now see it. And so we need to also think about what type of institutions does that need to be. Like, does it become a formal learning program, or does it need to be a little bit more fluid, a little bit more adaptable to take into account someone who's maybe been working as an electrician for the past 30 years, or someone who's been working on the mine for the past 10 years and now is looking to articulate into a job that is maybe in the renewable energy sector. So how do we create learning opportunities both within the workplace but also through different RPL processes, through different institutions, through different learning mechanisms, so that you are effectively responding to a challenge that has a multi-level, where you need to create multi-level and multi-entry points for learning for people to have access.
Thanks a lot. Doc.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'll try to answer the question for our sister from Fort Hare. What I hear is like we have a square, we are trying to put a triangle. You know, it's like a losing battle. And what you are saying is something that is true, because now it's also a matter of a strategy. Are we advocating for bottom-up or top-down? We have documents that are well documented, like your SDGs. We have our African Agenda 2063. But who informs who? Because as Africans, we have our African Agenda. UN have the SDGs. And if you read that document, we have tried to align the SDGs within our African Agenda. But still it's going to boil to who informs who, because the one informs the other, have the upper hand. And our people there in rural, because the emphasis was on rural people, some of the people who were part of those processes, they've never even been there. They don't know what's going on there. They will rely on hearsay. Like one of our international leaders believed what the hearsay, only to find out the evidence before him was not even from South Africa. So these are the things that we need to have our people who are decision makers and policy makers to visit, do site visit, so that when we come and suggest, and that's the thing, you suggest for these people, you've been there, you know that this thing is valuable and it's implementable. Because most of the time, our suggestions are not applicable to these people, because some of the areas you need to have a tailor-made strategy so that they are able to benefit from that. We can even touch for the language, resources, and all of those things to say your suggestions are saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but resource is a problem. Before we even want to say, okay, we are on board, but we need this and this and this, will you provide? Then they will say, yes, will be provided, but we know. The yes will be there, but the action won't be there. And now when we are knocking to doors, there are people now will even stop taking your calls or responding to your emails, because now we are being too much. So I think it's important that as Africans, we go back to the drawing board and advocate for a bottom-up strategy. Yes, it takes time. It may even consume financially, but the budgets are there for such things. We budget for those items so that we do site visits to those sites before we even start doing recommendations. You do a recommendation that needs water, but there's no pipe. These people are using JoJo tanks where they have to queue with buckets to get water. Those are the challenges that we have. Some people, it's a language issue. We go there, we speak English, We have indigenous people, now we're talking about traditional leaders. Some of them, they don't hear our languages. We come with documents printed, we submit, we go. They are not even translated into their languages, but we expect those people to implement what we are saying on those documents, which is a problem when it comes to communication. Communication is a problem. I think I've tried to answer that one. Yeah, if maybe there's more, we will engage further. And just to touch a bit on what Dr. Ntebe just indicated, talking about the water, that clean water being used for bathrooms and other things, which is a wastage, if we may really put it in this context, because South Africa, we are struggling with water. We remember Cape Town have the Day Zero challenge where they didn't have water. Now, we need to engage as tourism people and bring other experts on the side, like we have your Grading Council. We have people like our manager and our chair here. We have yourselves who are researchers to say, how do we mitigate? Because water is a scarce resource, and we have people who are doing research through water, who are specializing on water to say, how to mitigate in this issue. Like also to add on that water thing, we have wastage. We know that a hotel produces more wastage than anybody else. Where does that waste go? And how do we deal with it in a proper manner, as per the policy says, which it becomes a challenge for us. And at the end of the day, we find ourselves contributing to the challenge that we are having without being aware. Thank you very much.
Thanks. To just respond to the two questions, just on outreach. It's quite critical, and the PCC was the first one was one of the organizations to actually know that there is a disjuncture between what we are feeding out and whether people understand it. And so critical to our outreach has been making sure that people understand the basics of what climate action is, so that you don't mix short-term weather changes with the real challenges. So it's quite that. And there's been issues of language. Firstly, from just English to Zulu, but then also a language from highly technical and not simplified. Then there is access to information. You do a major study on social impact, and it's 4,000, it's like your thesis, it's 4,000 pages, and you expect a community to read that and constructively agree on whether the mine must continue or not. They will not. Firstly, they will not have data to download that. Secondly, they'll know when it's too late. And then you also do EIAs. You put up a small notice that says that there's 30 days notice to make this. You put it in a pole when it rains. You use a goki pen. In the morning, it's gone. Yeah, it's faded out. And those, or you also go into social media, you've got a lot of misinformation. So some of the challenges are actually misinformation because people are greenwashing. So people will tell you there is a lot of coal underneath. But they don't tell you that, but people are stopping to buy it, you know. But also they don't tell you that the road haulage is disrupting tourism. People are no more using that road because they are competing with trucks as they go to nice places. So there is a big challenge of misinformation. So we're launching a number of multi-fronted campaigns. We're launching a Just Transition. We actually launched a Just Transition podcast that just wants to target and engage with young people. But we are looking into campaigns like, there used to be a project called the Green Campus Initiative, so that you reach out to young people, but to universities in all facets. So when the university gives you the cost of the fees, for example, for residents, you have got to ask them, I'm paying 7,000 rand a month because you are wasting water. So you start challenging the university's climate commitments based on their resource consumption. You've got to tell them, as long as you don't put solar panels, rises will always be expensive because I'm paying for something that I'm not using. I'm paying for the inefficiencies. But then also it's about going into communities and using the traditional non-governmental organizations to continue to talk to communities, what you would call rudimentary organs of people's power. You know, street committees, youth committees, local development association. I'm not saying you must not go to formal institutions of governance, but go to those elements, what we would call organs of people's power, where people sit in there, there's no faction, they're only focusing on solving a problem. You know, so there are those challenges. We're trying to make our website zero-rated so that anyone can access it without paying. So there are quite a number of, so we are even beginning to translate our website into at least 3 languages, English, 1 Nguni and 1 Sotho. But that has not come cheap. And people think that communication it's cheap, and it's actually one of the most expensive, but one of the most critical enablers. So without that, you'll not be able to succeed. But to also just respond before I give to the rest of the panels, just on the global North versus global South agenda. And we are dilly-dallying. There is concerted efforts to really appreciate that sometimes the West has not come to the party. And we've got to say it, we've made measure. That's why I gave you an example about attending the Rio Summit in 1991. 30 years later, the money has not come. There is biodiversity loss. We are still living on less than $1 a day. 1.8 billion young people are out there, unemployed, uneducated. And there continues to be the rich. So there is actually that disparity that we make some of this commitment when there is global crisis, but the money has not been coming to Africa. So some of the things we have done as the PCC is to say that without the climate finance, we will not meet the goals. Without cheaper loans, we will not be able to meet. Without new technology. So don't give us technology that is obsolete from Europe and try for us to use it in Africa because you found new ideas. So you are correct. There is a major imbalance globally around the North and the South. And that's why sometimes South Africans will always say, no, but we cannot meet up. These are Western ideals, But the other challenge with international law in the environment space is that very, very few is actually enforceable, And students of law will tell you that there is nothing called international law. It's actually domestic law. So when you find that you're actually subscribing to international law, it basically means that some strong country has actually exported their law into your country, and you're calling international law. So you've got to continue to balance the forces. But we must also say that we've got emerging partners. And it's not because they've paid for this dialogue, but with the shift in geopolitics, you've actually seen Europe coming closer to Africa. So there are a number of partners that are seeing opportunities for cooperating with Africa, but it does not mean that they don't have domestic interest. You saw with COVID when people left us to die. And it happens in climate action when people are facing domestic challenges, they seem to prioritize their nation states. So that's why you need an ally of African nations, of regional nations to continue to bring in an economic bloc in Africa to be able to challenge the status quo. I know I'm sounding like a Gweta Mantashe or any other politician, but that is the balance of forces internationally. So I think having said that, I'll give my 2 panelists to just also on tourism lastly. Efficiency is not only, there is the Department of Tourism has got a green efficiency incentive scheme, and I think that operators must try to access some of those incentive schemes to just make sure that the tourism sector performs better. But true and said, the sector is actually one of the most underperforming in terms of efficiency, and it should be quite easier. They've tried to drop the towel if you're not going to use it, but even if that towel, when they use this, you're saying they still use 10 liters of water to do that, and they generally don't recycle. So there is a lot of work we can do in the various sectors. Your parting shot, Dlamini and Nikki.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to add on the challenges of water, and also a research that has been done as something that could be a solution, which is also the solar radiation modification, and also in South Africa, what could it mean? So it says here in terms of the information, the SRM, which is solar radiation modification, significantly reduces projected temperature across South Africa, particularly in summer rainfall, where regions heat-related risk rising, but the effects vary by season and location, and not all areas are equally cool. So what could it also mean for the people of South Africa, like in terms of issues like water? There would be less water availability, which is under RCP, which is representative concentration pathway, which is like a scenario of the future. you know. So the SRM could also ease pressure on like water resources, but may also reduce rainfall in some areas. It also, affects agriculture, where crops and like livestock could stress could worsen under like the RCP. And also SRM may reduce heat stress, but also reduce rainfall. And also, it affects the health side of things, because it increases heat-related illnesses and flood risk. And SRM may lower heat extremes and health system strains. And also vulnerable communities where there's a high exposure to heat and drought. SRM could also reduce a mitigation process, So it also speaks about urban centers, where it could also reduce extreme heat and flood risk, improving resilience of infrastructure, So this is also a research that is also still, I would say it's a research that is ongoing, as there was a global decree forum in Cape Town, which happened last year in May, which was they say is the largest SRM gathering ever, whereby a lot of people came from different parts of the world. They came to that meeting to actually discuss this thing. But also it goes back to the fact that it was said that other regions are coming to actually participate into topics like this that actually include Africa, but not their own regions, and which also compromises the Asian ways that things were done. So also SRM is still a topic that is being under a lot of supervision, because it could also be a solution at this point.
Thanks. To the scientists, please, what he's saying is that accelerate your research so that you can get into the applied space. Don't think forever.
Thank you. I actually just want to come back to the question around Kigali as well.
Kampala.
Was it Kampala?
Yes.
Sorry. So just on the issue of cleanliness of the cities, I do want to say, I think in comparison, I get what you mean, why you would say that, because versus there and here. One of the main things around that is the level of ownership that the communities have access to. So asset ownership, or any level of ownership, is really important. If you consider, even in the South African context, areas that are highly polluted in terms of rubbish in the streets, etc., is very much those places where people don't have any level of ownership. And a free house doesn't necessarily count as ownership to some extent. So if you think about things like that the level of responsibility a person has towards a thing is linked to how much ownership they have to it. So if you consider, how much that is being advocated for within the city, and how that could be, accelerated, but also consider how young people are being brought in versus, older people who are sort of set in their ways. They're generally not willing to learn, because that's just how they've continued to exist. But when you think about youth mobilization, how is it directed towards, first of all, things like cooperatives, which can help youth to have a sense of ownership, whether it's a cooperative that's linked to agriculture, a cooperative that's linked to, even just putting together, artisans who have small businesses. They do, odd jobs here and there, but they are formed into a cooperative that is then creating for them an asset from which they can access, economic power. And that creates a deeper sense of ownership, and that can start to change, mindsets around how people are responding to, the community and how they build the community. So I think that's one of the structures that, could be explored. And again, that's, it's very difficult to change mindsets overall, but ownership certainly is one direction that could go. And, I think that's something that probably requires funding money and mobilization of resources, but I think for me the response of youth mobilization from whatever assets they already have, from whatever they are already working on, creates a stronger, sense of ownership in the long term. And so it could be that it's a kind of generational shift that you want to instate, and not just a fix it now kind of thing. So it's then saying into the future, how are we, and it's probably going to require some research to some extent and to see, where it could go. But that's just my thinking around that. And yeah, there's probably a lot of work that it requires beyond that in terms of research. But yeah, and then I think the parting shot for me is just the youth mobilization, the importance of youth mobilization, especially in policy. I think across the room, there's a lot of places where we could insert, the voices of youth, especially because of how innovation is driven by young people in different ways, because young people think differently about the challenges. Everybody complains about Gen Z, but consider how innovative they are in terms of, in general, in everything, and how very connected they are to technology, but also to the world in a different way than previous generations. So it's then looking at those structures and how are we directing, whether their passions are, everybody wants to be a social media influencer, but then how do we direct them towards something that's meaningful, right? So even if they have 10,000 followers and they want to be an influencer, but are you talking to them about, the issues that are affecting the world and how they can advocate for that, right? So use their voices to the other young people who are listening to them to drive, important messaging around whether it's policy participation or participation in local structures, or even, conferences like this, right? To draw young people to participate and to just lend their ear to some of the challenges that are being discussed here. So these are the things that are, that we all should be considering, especially at university level. We have a captured youth audience that we could sort of start to disseminate all of that. And many of them are influencers as a side hustle in some form or another. And so it's then saying, how are we tapping into that? Because that's a valuable asset in youth that we could expend. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. A round of applause to my panel. As they go, before I release them, the gentleman from Kampala. There are other two things. South Africa has got a very strong waste economy. It's not optimum. So there is some very strong recycling economy. Tires are quite emerging, paper and plastic and scrap metal. Scrap metal don't even have to wait for it to be waste. They go for it even when you are still using it. But then of course the other aspect is that we've got a lot of waste tenders. So there is people make money out of cleaning waste with government contracts. So it's incentivized them. So I think the way the recycling economy, some legislated environment for waste management at the local level, incentivizing community waste pickers has actually really moved in some of the things. But I think that the rest we'll see as we continue. But thank you very much. You've been a very great audience and panel. As they come down, let me call in Moresi to just come and give us highlights, and then also call in Professor Dube to come and do us the... Moresi and Professor Katiano Dube are the ones that made sure that this happened from a content point of view. I just got an allocation for 2 hours, and Professor Dube and Moresi said, this is what you do with 2 hours when you're meeting youth and postgraduate students. So Moresi, thank you very much for conceptualizing the dialogue with Prof. Dube, and just share with us how you think we can continue to collaborate, and then we do the vote of thanks. Then we can announce where are we having dinner, lunch.
Thank you very much, and I certainly do stand between yourselves and lunch, and I could also use that. So my name is Moresi, and I'm with the Presidential Climate Commission. I am an advisor in the Adaptation and Resilience team, but more specifically working on a very interesting and exciting project, and that is our Just Adaptation and Resilience Investment Platform. That is something that is quite exciting, a new development, and certainly starting to tie in all those pieces. A lot is coming out of here around what can be done, And what we are working on is how we're going to finance that, because all of this really does need a lot of investment and support and proper institutional arrangements to drive it. I think your closest reference to what we're doing would be the JET, which is a country platform as things stand. But in this particular case, we're going to be focusing on a country platform for adaptation and resilience, because we also know very well that adaptation and resilience is grossly underfunded, grossly underinvested, and but we also know that it's actually quite critical if we want to move the dial on climate action and making an impact on climate change. But my job here was really just to touch on the highlights from today. I personally think we're in great company. This is a really, really important community of practice, and I think it's one that needs to be protected, advanced, and supported, and grown even. It would be good to see this grow from strength to strength. It really is a center of excellence, and I think it's concerning when we start also getting a sense that sometimes research happens in a vacuum. So those are things that I think are coming out that need to be addressed, and addressed quite cleverly. My thoughts about that actually is I think there needs to be also greater investment and greater research that goes into community organizing in a proper way. What does community organizing look like? Where are the real pockets of influence in communities? We often think, you know, the traditional leader or the councillor or the popular guy is the leader in a community, but often it's not. It's sometimes smaller groups, groups of women, groups of mothers, groups of grandparents, or something like that, that actually also hold centers as centers of power and can be used in this. But what is clearly coming through and has come through is that communities really are quite important in this particular case, whether it's communities of farmers, communities of young people, or just broader communities in a particular location. That is clear. And what needs to really be bridged is science and real communities where people live, is research and the application that needs to be bridged, is that the communities of higher education like yourselves and communities where real people live. I think there's opportunities there to do a lot more. And I think if I just pick up on some interesting words that came out from even earlier from our DVC, that, youth matters, because, it's a significant part of our population, significant group of our population, and the future trajectory of our country. But also picked up a few interesting things here, that we should not be observers, but we are really architects of this. And more structurally, I think I just want to then thank you all for this particular dialogue. I think from the PCC's perspective, I think what this really does, the engagement today, it just proves the PCC's ongoing commitment to that intergenerational equity in terms of climate policy and climate action. So it's really quite exciting. In as far as the JET is concerned, I think we see that the youth is quite important, and that as we rebuild economies and move into the transition that is just, certain things that are going to be important and coming from these quarters around the youth and youth in higher education is particularly around the requisite and the right skills development. It's about meaningful participation that makes sense. It's about also those entrepreneurial activities and opportunities. It's not really just only in the academic sphere, but these things should also start translating into economic opportunities. I think from these quarters, we also would want to see climate tech innovations. We want to see real, research that's really groundbreaking in this particular case, and things that really move us forward. In as far as the Just Adaptation and Resilience Investment Plan, maybe I can highlight, we all know what the climate risks are. We are facing droughts, we are facing floods, and all manner of things. And in that, this is where we also think this community can help us with those climate tech, agri-tech, smart technologies and smart innovations that move us through. But also, again, as I said earlier, is models for engagement that really connect communities, that really connect industry and connect funding even. So a lot more research must really go into that, because that social science is quite key, and it's what's going to help us build better and better models. I think I don't want to miss something. I have spoken about bridging education policy and action, so that's definitely quite important. Most importantly, it's really that we need to be co-creating and co-designing these solutions that make sense. We've already heard that they must be locally relevant, they must be context-specific. For us, you know, if we are coming together with this platform, country platform that's going to mobilize funding at scale in the region of billions and trillions, it has to filter down to projects that get implemented. But these projects have to be built from the ground up. And this is where the co-creation, the co-designing becomes important, whether it's through your IDPs in your municipal levels, or whether it's actually projects that are being, you know, thought about by young people like yourselves and really being presented as proposals for bringing in that adaptation and resilience into our communities. That's going to be quite important. So the two are going to come together, and hopefully in the next 5 years we can actually really be able to report on some really exciting things that have happened. That said, yeah, I think maybe just a reminder that in this particular community, what we really want is to see much more evidence-based policy. So we need more robust models, data, and information coming from your quarters. We want to see locally appropriate responses and solutions that make sense. We want to see innovation and technology. We want to see skills and development that make sense. We want to see community engagement that is really a proper. We talk a lot about indigenous knowledge, for example, but we don't see it really coming through and making its way into some of the solutioning that we're looking for. And more than that, I think it was encouraging to also see that there are ways to influence, not only locally, but also regionally and internationally through the UNFCCC there with the Y20 colleague. And yeah, I think on that note, Blessing, maybe just a way forward, aside from there's a JET skills desk that we talked about that is launching on Friday. So that's something that you can look forward to and get involved with. The skills in Daba that's happening in October, that's going to be quite important. The youth structures that I just mentioned, where you can participate locally, regionally, and internationally, that's really good. I think the PCC can be expected to continue this partnership with the VUT. That's not going to stop. I think we probably need to think about a way of scaling it, improving it, and really fortifying it even more. And I think as a call to action, Blessing, you can correct me, there would be a report that comes out of this, right? There will be a report that comes out of this. It will be shared. And I think from that, we can really think about how to strengthen this community of practice to be better. On that note, I wish you a wonderful lunch and do enjoy the rest of your day. And I hand over. Thanks.
You're hungry, but you can't just stand up. You must know where you're going to eat. We formally need to call in Prof. Are you coming to do that, or is Professor Dube coming to? He's moving up and down. Oh, yes. Thanks. From Faculty of Education. Department of Education, yes. Not the one in Pretoria with issues, ne? Okay. Doc.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I think he made a blunder by giving a teacher the last slot. You know, teachers, they know how to talk. Okay. Just as a way of saying, I'm very excited that you came, especially you, the students, and it's a way in which you are being inducted into research. And I wish you all the best. And when we go to the conference, this was just a warm-up of what is coming. We are quite happy with the stakeholders which have brought up this particular platform for you as students to learn and to hear what we can do with some of the challenges which you are facing, not only in South Africa, but globally. The issue of plastics, I think, is everywhere. I've heard, I haven't been there, that Kigali is one of the smartest cities in Africa. And we still have a lot of garbage everywhere. And I think these young minds are there to sort out these problems. I'm excited. Those ones who came, Prof, you came, the DVC in absentia for research, he was here. We thank him also in absentia. The Vice Chancellor is also not here, but we also thank them for facilitating, because it didn't just come and everything else unfolded as it is. To the partners, I think there are various universities who have been participating. The Presidential Commission, I think we are more than grateful. Please continue with these endeavors so that at least we can find solutions. In case I didn't mention all of them, but I want to say all the stakeholders who made this thing to happen. I don't think, Prof. Dube is not here. I think he must be one of the person who wants to see it succeed. To him we say, well done. We still have to do more. I will be watching you at the conference, and please do come. Enjoy your lunch. We are dismissed.
Oh, okay. This is what their house.